And we're back. So for those of you that have joined us for the past 2 hours, thank you so much. For those of you that are just joining us, Dan and I have been here for 2 hours talking about cloud workspace, and now we're going to talk about security. My name is Anna Ruiz. I'm a technical marketing architect, and I am joined by Dan Feller.
Hey everyone, I'm lead architect in our tech marketing team. So, as Anna said, we're on now hour 3. Doesn't feel like 3 hours, does it? Actually, I'm exhausted.
Me too.
But so we've touched upon migrating to the cloud, especially for the virtual apps and desktops organizations that are out there. And we talked about how to build off of that to incorporate some of the workspace capabilities. And now what we want to do is talk about security and some of these decisions that organizations need to make and some tools that are available for you within Workspace.
Yeah, for sure. And as our customers are starting to make that cloud migration, and just in the world that we live in, I feel like cyber attacks have become more complex, have become more prevalent. It's extremely important for everyone to have security as, just something that's top of mind and that they're always thinking about and revisiting on how they can make their environment more secure and better in that regard.
Yeah, it's probably about every day I'm getting emails that I need to go in and reset my Apple password, which I don't have an Apple account, or that I'm related to some Nigerian prince that's going to give me $1 million. So security is always should be on top of people's mind.
Yeah, from a personal perspective, but also from a corporate perspective. So I figured, just like in the other master classes, which we had experts that we interviewed and asked questions about, that for this masterclass, we invite some security experts. For our first guest, we're going to have Nick Sabernik. He is a director of professional services. He has been with Citrix for a while and has helped a ton of customers. And we're going to bring him in and specifically ask him about web application firewall. Welcome, Nick.
Hey, hello, everyone. Thanks, Dan and Anna. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I'm Nick Sabernik. I run our networking and public sector professional services architecture teams here at Citrix. And thanks for reminding me that I've been here for 14 years this year. So it's been quite a long time.
Yeah, you actually trained me when I first joined Citrix. You led some of my training.
I remember. I remember.
So Nick, Dan and I were just talking about how, security should be top of mind, as you know, and I'm sure you talk to our customers on an everyday basis. And we wanted to bring you specifically to talk to us a little bit more about web application firewall, why it's important and why customers should care about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start is, the why, as we say in consulting. So there's a lot of reasons. The first and maybe most compelling is that the type of protection that web application firewall or WAF provides, happens to combat one of the most common attack surfaces we see, which is business applications, specifically web applications. If you've never read the Verizon data breach investigation reports, which I encourage everyone to do, they noted in 2020 about 43% of security breaches were web application based. This number, continues to rise year after year. I expect it to continue doing so. And the report found that this was, at least partially a result of businesses moving workloads to cloud. I often also talk to customers that use, traditional firewalls and they use intrusion prevention systems as their primary network defense layers. Those are great. But we're at a point where web apps are so critical to business function and often vulnerable to attack even with firewalls and IPS systems in place, simply because those solutions were never made to protect against the type of web attacks we see today. Another common thing I see is that, security hygiene is almost never perfect. I speak with customers, who are rightfully proud of their overall security design and operations. But when we start doing assessments on their, on-prem or cloud environments, we often find that, they're susceptible to very commonly known vulnerabilities because this stuff is hard. Security is not a perfect science, but, implementing WAF can significantly reduce the risk of breach. And lastly here, maybe one of the biggest misconceptions I see going around is that, compliance actually equals security. And that's simply just not true. Things like, PCI DSS, HIPAA, NIST 853, DISA-STIGs, these security standards are a great place to start. But we shouldn't be, congratulating ourselves once we've met those standards. They should be viewed as the low bar to clear. WAF can help you with that compliance, but, also provide much more.
I think when a lot of people talk about security, especially, those of us who came from the Citrix virtual app and desktop background, the admins and all that, we always think of the security as, the user security of multi-factor authentication, locking down drive mappings, and, what you can print and where you can print to. But this is actually not looking at the user. Seems like we're looking more at the application itself.
Yeah, it's sort of both, right? There's definitely the application itself, as well as the user side and what the user is doing during a session and what they should be doing. Specifically, focused on the web, maybe not our traditional, what you're doing on a Windows desktop. As more people are moving to these web applications, we need to start looking at the same stuff we do on the Windows virtualization side, with these web applications. And that's where WAF comes in.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So Nick, if I'm a customer and I don't have WAF and I'm thinking, this sounds great, but I have no idea where to start, what's kind of that first step? Like, where do I start, in order to implement this?
Well, that's a great question. So, here's a few level high lessons, learned from the field. The best tip that I can give any customer, the best tip I can give is to start with, requirements gathering. As any good consultant will tell you, that's always the first place you start for almost anything, right? You can't protect anything if you don't know what you need to protect in the first place. This probably seems a little bit obvious, but it's a step that I see a lot of customers kind of fast track through, which leads to incomplete security requirements, which then leads to incomplete security overall. Like I said, security hygiene is often imperfect, if not always. And the requirements gathering phase is, arguably the most important one to correct that. You need to know what's important to the business, what your assets are, who uses them, et cetera, before you can go further. I know I just said, compliance does not equal security, but it is a great place to start. It should be easy to figure out what compliance you need to meet, depending on your business, and use that as a security baseline. I also see more and more customers, adopting non-mandatory standards, things like, NIST 853 into their IT security models, which is great to see. But again, while compliance is a good starting goal, it's nowhere close to the finish line there. Next, I would say that, threat prioritization is also a really good place to start, especially after requirements gathering. This means looking at what you found during your requirements phase and figuring out what your risk actually is. What are the largest attack vectors? What are your biggest security gaps, et cetera? Yeah, this is something our consulting teams, help customers address, all the time. I also realize that these things are easier to talk about than to actually do sometimes. So for our customers that don't have the time or, personnel or experience to really go through requirements gathering threat prioritization, exercises, one, always call Citrix to help out. But I would recommend you start with maybe like the OWASP top 10. So this is basically a list of, top 10 web application security risks based upon, data from numerous app security firms and industry surveys. So it's really, it's a fantastic place to start looking to see if your applications are vulnerable and what level of risk they might present, based upon the most common web app attacks that are out there. Only after you've done that can you decide how WAF is actually going to protect you.
No, that sounds great. It sounds, I feel like a lot of times customers are ready to get the ball rolling and they miss that planning phase, which, from your experience, it sounds like you really do need that, right? You really need to sit down, plan it, make sure to outline your security requirements, your goals before you kind of kick the tires and get the ball rolling.
Yep, it's a classic mistake I see, and it always leads to, missed, security attack vectors and gaps. So it's definitely probably the most important part. So definitely begin there.
Awesome. And what about, you've done this for a ton of customers. So I'm sure, the ones that are listening from a best practice perspective, at CCS, we're all about best practices and, providing that. So from a WAF perspective, what are some of the best practices that, that you can talk about?
Sure. So probably the best tip I can give for customers starting to look at WAF is to just start simple. It can be a little overwhelming at first, the number of things that WAF and the capabilities that it has. So, make sure that you're doing your requirements gathering and threat prioritization first. These things will tell you where you're most vulnerable and maybe what top 3 things you can do to make your business safer. Don't try to do everything at once. Security is a journey. Even without knowing much, WAF does make baseline security fairly simple. You can use our, imported signature database to fend off, some of the most common web attacks, pretty easily. These are constantly updated and released. They provide a lot of value for very little time investment, so that's a good place to start. WAF also makes it easy to do, what we would say like as virtual patching of applications by importing results that you have from other third-party tools like AppScan or White Hat if you want to go even deeper. Again, that's all very simple, but very impactful as well. After these basic things, you can look at, moving on to something like a positive security model where you're basically, whitelisting activity versus blacklisting bad activity. This is helpful in protecting against some of those OWASP findings, as well as providing protection for zero-day exploits. But to get there, you really need baseline and testing. These are critical if you want to use some of the most advanced functionality within WAF, like the positive security model I mentioned. Protection against zero-day exploits takes investment in this part of the security process. WAF, for example, has a learning mode that allows you to feed it good behavior, meaning that you can then whitelist that and blacklist bad behavior or abnormal behavior to varying different degrees. However, proper testing becomes extremely important here. If you don't properly define good behavior, then we can miss the bad, or even falsely flag valid, user or app behavior. So, false positives, I would say this is, are going to happen in any WAF solution, by the way, when you use like a positive security model. But that's why we test and iterate first. So here we always recommend, either a controlled test environment if you're going to do something like learning mode and try to figure out what good behavior is, as controlled as possible. Or you use, like a trusted client list if you really have to do, external testing, right? Because we really, if we open it up external, we don't want to open up to everyone. You want to know who those clients are so that you're not capturing junk in that learning model, because that's going to put you at risk later. You'll also need good input from your business application owners at this phase as to what the application does, what data sources it uses, etc. And lastly here, my recommendation is to go beyond WAF, right? Don't just stop at web application firewall security. Citrix ADC has so many cool and useful security features, on a single box. It'd be kind of a crime to not utilize them. Rate limiting, IP reputation, surge protection. These are all things that the ADC can do natively. And shouldn't be overlooked even if you started with WAF. This is the layered security or, Swiss cheese model of security, where each layer or component, does have some blind spots. But if you layer enough of them together, right, your overall security, greatly increases. And lastly here, I'll remind everyone that, availability is part of the security triad, along with confidentiality and integrity. So don't forget to ensure your business apps, have uptime with other ADC features like load balancing, locally or global server load balancing across data centers.
So before we let you go, I'm just kind of curious, when we talk a lot about implementing different solutions, one of the questions that always comes up is sizing. Are there any specific considerations that you're able to share on the WAF side around sizing the solution, or how you go about figuring it out?
Yeah, sizing is always a good question, and something I haven't addressed yet. This is making sure, right, that we have availability but not overloading our security measures. Nothing is free in life, right? So it's important to look at the security measures we're putting in place and what the impact is to the expected user performance and user experience, as well as your back-end system resource consumption, right? A few basic things that might affect sizing, it would be the types of features in play. Are you using basic or advanced signatures? How many different security checks, does WAF have to do, right? How many HTTP requests are coming in per second that need processing? All those things affect sizing. Also, what is your get versus post ratio? Basically, how much data will the users be sending? This is generally more expensive processing-wise than requesting information from a web app. This also applies to the size of that data, the size of those posts that are being sent, and if scans need to take place. There's, of course, other things like logging and session reuse that impact scalability and sizing. and would be considerations when layering this security along with other things on the Citrix ADC.
Awesome. Hey Nick, thanks a lot for joining us. It's actually one of the first times I've heard a good overview of WAF and what it can do. I think it's a good place for people to start thinking about some of the security things they can be doing just beyond what we typically see for just securing a user, but actually looking at the app.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nick. Awesome. Well, that was, like you said, I think that was one of the best WAF overviews that I've heard. Usually networking is way over my head, but this, really cleared it up of why it's important. So I'm glad we were able to have Nick here with us and, give us that overview and tell, talk to our customers about the importance of WAF and why they should really be thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think it was a good start on the security thing, but I want to move back to, I think we should move back to, what a lot of us think on security is the end user. And especially with this year, so many people are now working remotely. I mean, for me, it's like I've been working remotely for 15 years. So I always know that security is always one of these things that no one really thought about when I was working remotely, because I was one of the few people that did it. But now that so many people are remote, it's like, okay, we need a better security solution than what we have now.
Yeah, and I think that combined with, people now expect to be able to work from their personal devices and, BYO devices that aren't corporate, company managed. I think that's, companies are starting to rethink the way that they do security, right? Because before you got this super hardened corporate device that, you couldn't do anything else on. And now as millennials and, other folks are starting to join the workforce, it's like, I want to be able to work from my personal MacBook, from my iPad, from my phone. So how do you do that without completely restricting the end user experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the last masterclass, for those of you who attended, we talked about a little bit on single sign-on, SSO, and the importance of this, and really how it makes the user experience better. There's also a security aspect to it as well, so you don't have to remember all these passwords, creating stupid passwords. And then, even touch a little bit upon SD-WAN in the whole scheme of things. I think, though, we should, come back to the topic of SaaS applications and dive a little bit deeper and talk about some of the options that, people can now do when they incorporate SaaS applications into a workspace.
Yeah, for sure. And I think on that note, we can invite Frank Serp. He is part of Dan's Knight's team. He's a technical marketing architect, and he can, talk to us a little bit more about that topic. Hey, Frank, thanks for joining. So Dan and I, we just spoke to Nick about web application firewall and just about the importance of, securing the workspace. And so we wanted to bring you in to talk to us a little bit more about secure workspace access and how that helps our customers and how that, they're able to utilize that to secure their environment even more.
So a couple of things that, we're focusing on the workspace is, one, making it extremely user-friendly. And secondly is adding the security components to the workspace so that organizations can feel comfortable allowing users to access the corporate information while outside of that hardened corporate network and those hardened corporate devices that you had mentioned, Anna. So, there are new security and network architectures, and the workforce requires this type of consistent, fast, and secure access. So one of the things that we're going to do is that we're going to allow the Citrix Workspace to, and secure workspace access to solve this challenge. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what secure workspace access is. And secure workspace access is the ability for us and organizations to give their end users access to the corporate resources and the SaaS resources that they need. So if we're looking at this diagram, we're going to notice that, secure workspace access gives us a VPN-less access to our on-prem resources. It's also going to give us SSO to our SaaS web mobile, and virtual applications. It's going to give us website filtering and browser isolation. It's going to give us contextual access, data governance, and also some zero trust around this as well. So when we're looking at the Secure Workspace Access, and it includes the SSO to both the SaaS and web applications, as you can kind of see, it just, all of those applications are available to you within the Citrix Workspace. And we're going to give you the unified access to those applications, the VPN access to the web applications, the SSO to the SaaS-based applications, and as well as the multi-factor to those applications as well, to add an additional layer of security for those organizations which are looking to have hardened or additional security measures. So as we go ahead and we look at this, it's very simple for the admins. They just come into the Citrix Cloud, and as they create the web application, they'll get to a section where it'll ask them for the single sign-on, and there's multiple different types of single sign-on that we can utilize to allow for those web applications to gain access without the utilization of a VPN. And then when we go to the SaaS-based application, it's going to be very template-based. We're going to help the end users and the admins go ahead and fill out that information. And then once again, we will go ahead and utilize the SAML protocol in that situation. So as we go ahead and we can actually take a look at how this works. So in this case, it's a SaaS-based application. The user goes ahead and logs into the workspace. In this case, we're also doing a one-time token, so that gets entered in. Once the user logs in, Secure Workspace Access is going to go ahead and handle the rest, so they can select the SaaS-based application, select that. It'll launch, and it'll go ahead and communicate to the back-end infrastructure in the Citrix Cloud, and then you can see we log in immediately to our SaaS-based application. Now, with a web-based application, you're going to notice it's almost identical, but in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to log in, and on the SaaS-based application, we saw that it utilized the native browser. In this case, it's going to go ahead and log us in. We're going to use that one-time token again. And as we go ahead and come into the Citrix Workspace, we look at our applications and we find our SharePoint in this specific example. It's going to launch an embedded browser, and as we can see here, it does do the single sign-on as well.
No, that's awesome, and I'm glad that you were able to show that, Frank. Those were really good demos. I think it's important from the end user perspective, but also, this masterclass around security. What else can we do from a security perspective? Like, what other tools do the administrators have in order to even make this more secure?
So some of the things that we have is with Secure Workspace Access, we can actually do enhanced security for both SaaS and web-based applications. And as we enable this via this Secure Workspace Access for our users, and this is something that differentiates Citrix as a whole, we can do a couple of different things. So we can do data protection and have policies for individual SaaS and web-based applications. We can do contextual access policies. We can do protection from keyloggers, screen capturing malware. We can also do secure browser and have policies set to force individual browsers into browser isolation in that aspect as well.
Are you so on these security policies? Now, are these like for the entire workspace? Or are you breaking this down on an application by application basis?
So these are actually broken down by application. So one of the things that you're going to notice is when a user comes into the environment, what they're going to do is as they're going through and they're setting up either the SaaS-based application or the web app, they can go ahead and enable the enhanced security components that they want. So some of the examples is restrict keyboard access, that the traditional cut, copy, paste, the printing, navigation, downloads. We can add a watermark, and then we can even take it one step further and use the enhanced security policies. And with that aspect, we're going to utilize restrict key logging and restrict screen capture.
Really cool. So I know that a lot of our listeners love demos. So is there any way that you could show us a little bit about these enhanced security policies? Do you have a demo around that?
I do. So as we go ahead and we want to look at this demo, once again, we're going to log into our Citrix Workspace app, and we're going to utilize our traditional username and password, and we're going to have that one-time token for the additional authentication component. And once we log in, we're going to see that the workspace hasn't changed. And when we launch our web application here, in this specific case, we're going to see that there's a couple of different things since we've turned on the enhanced security. And one of those is going to be the watermark that we just identified. And up here, we can see that their cut, copy, paste is restricted, and we also do not have the ability to print. And we've blocked the restrictions from navigating around. And at this point, what we're going to see is we're going to try to download an application, and we're going to see that this actual download is restricted as well. So regardless of the file and where I'm trying to download it from within that session, I'm going to have the ability to restrict those capabilities.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Frank. I think we learned quite a bit on the whole secure workspace access and how that gets integrated, what it does for our different web apps, for the VPN lists, and the enhanced security that it adds on. So thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
Thanks, Frank. Well, that was awesome information, really good demos. I know we promised our end users some good demos, so I really liked seeing that. And I think one of the important things when you're thinking about security, there's nothing that stops me from grabbing my phone, taking a picture. And so having those watermarking capabilities is important, right? Because now if I go and I take a picture, now they're going to know who did that, right? Whose environment that was. So really important.
Yeah, definitely. But, Frank touched on something there that he didn't, we didn't let him talk about it. But that, I think we should dive in a little bit deeper. And he mentioned this whole thing on screen captures and keyloggers. I think that's something we should take an additional look at to see what that's all about.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And for that, I think we should bring in our security guru, Martin. He's been also with Citrix for a while. If you've been to Synergies, you've probably heard him talk. So we're really excited to have Martin here with us.
Hi everyone. So I actually have to say it's my 10 years anniversary this week of working for Citrix. So it's been a while. It's been a ride for sure.
That's awesome.
So I hear you have some information for us on the app protection policies, keyloggers, screen capture stuff.
Yeah. Okay, let's get this started. So I will talk to you a bit about the app protection policies. That was kind of my favorite topic this whole year 2020. We are all working from home. Some of us, me and Dan as well, have been working from home for a very long time. And as we all know, it's really hard to protect those endpoints. The point of the whole app protection policies is it's an add-on feature for the Citrix Workspace app that is making sure that access to Citrix Workspace is secure. And what we are trying to do is that we are trying to provide protection against the keylogging, screen sharing, remote access Trojan, screen capture, all the common security kind of incidents that we are seeing in the field. Now, I liked at the beginning, Nick was talking about the data breach investigations report, and he was talking about hacking of the web applications, which is becoming more and more common. I would like to recommend everyone have a look at the data breach investigations report, highly recommend it. But if you look at the top security incidents and breaches that are reported in the last 12 months, what you are actually going to see is that number one, phishing attacks, number two, use of stolen credentials. I don't remember the exact position, but in top 10, you have password dumpers, you have misdelivery, you have a couple of different security breaches that are very common. And app protection policies has actually been designed to help with this, like the most common security issues that we are seeing. So essentially, there are two technologies that are part of app protection policies today. The first one is providing you protection against the keylogging or anything that is collecting the password or the keyboard presses on your machine. The second technology provides you protection from anything that is trying to remotely capture or locally capture what is on your screen. So you want to know a little bit about these two technologies?
Yeah, can you tell us more
Okay.
kind of behind the scenes, how it works? I'm sure everyone listening is very interested in that.
Okay, sounds good. So I am going to start with the AntiKilogram. In my personal opinion, from security perspective, this is the more important one. If you are going to look into what the criminals actually want, number one target for them is credentials. And if you go back 5 years, every single year you can see, for example, the money that you can get for stolen credential cards is actually very low. The money that as criminal that you can get for stolen credentials is much higher than credit card information. So this is in very high demand. And the way how the attackers typically do this is they deploy the keylogger on your machine. The keylogger is usually not interested in the emails that you are writing. It's most of them are acting as password harvester. So they are looking specifically for any username and passwords, collecting only the data and then sending it to an attacker that has implanted this on your machine. That's how it typically works today. Now, what we are doing, it's on a machine without app protection policies installed. You are typing on your keyboard. Anything that you are typing, the keylogger that is installed locally is going to see it. It's going to filter it. Any information that looks like a credit card number or it looks like a password, it's going to upload it to the command server where the attacker can see pretty much only actionable data that they can immediately use. Okay, this is the normal keylogger on like normal machine. Now, what we are going to do is when we introduce the anti-keylogger protection, the app protection policies, we are adding one extra kernel driver on the endpoint itself. And this kernel driver, think about it as a virtual keyboard driver. It's going to see everything that you are typing, and it's going to use the translation table to change it to some scrambled text. Important note, and I will mention it later, this table is constantly changing. So if you press 5 times the same key, you are going to see 5 different values based on this always changing table. Now, this table is not accessible in the Windows operating system. It's only accessible by the Workspace app. We call it, this is the shared memory buffer. So it's the same location in the physical memory of computer that is accessible by this driver, and it's also accessible by the application that we are trying to protect, the Citrix Workspace app. So now, what is happening here is when we have the keylogger deployed on system like this, and we start typing some text, for example, hello, this text is going to be translated using this table. So the keylogger that is deployed on the endpoint is just going to see some scrambled nonsense text. It's not going to be able to understand what you are typing. When this text arrives to the protected applications, it's not really traveling around, but the protected application is going to use this shared memory table to translate it back to the original text. And this is what is going to be transferred over HDX to the remote session that you have. Now, the obvious question can be, what happens if the keylogger is like the first in priority? A lot of keyloggers are also implemented as the virtual keyboard driver. We have a technology as part of the Citrix Workspace app that is constantly watching for this positioning. It's making sure that this driver responsible for scrambling is always at the top of the list. And it's the first kernel driver that is actually going to see this text as you are typing it. So kind of summary, this is implemented as the virtual keyboard driver hook. We are doing it for the PS2 and USB. In case if you've been wondering, PS2 ports, we haven't seen those in ages. This is implemented because many USB drivers are just emulation of PS2. So if we have PS2, it's such a low and old technology that we kind of guarantee that we are first in this case. As I mentioned before, this shared buffer, it's constantly changing. So for example, even if you would record the scrambled data for months, you will never be able to figure out what is the table because that table is not static. It's constantly changing all the time. Again, we are watching the position of our kernel driver. If anything tries to jump in front of it, we are going to stop it immediately and resort it again exactly as it was. And the kernel driver that we are using is non-stoppable and it's monitored by the Citrix Workspace app itself. So if you find a way how to stop this driver, the Workspace app will refuse to establish the connection to protected applications or desktops. Now, one final note that I would like to say is the app protection policies are not active all the time. The anti-kilogram protection, for example, it's activated only when the protected window is in focus. So if you, for example, implement the keylogger on protected machine, you will be able to see the plain text, but as soon as someone will open the Citrix Workspace app, you will start seeing just the random characters on the screen. And this is also important, by the way. We are not protecting only published applications and desktops. We are protecting also the initial authentication dialogues when you are logging on just to the workspace itself. And there is also tech preview to get this protection for the SaaS and web applications. So if you are thinking about Microsoft 365 and preventing the screen capture or anti-keylogging, this is actually working really well.
That's really interesting. When you were talking about it and the whole shared buffer, that was one of the things that came into my mind. It's like, well, for those people who like puzzles, you know, they'll just get a list of the text for so long, and it's a puzzle. Like, can I decrypt whatever that algorithm is going to be? But I didn't know that shared buffer is constantly changing. I guess it makes sense. You know, you'd have to, or you want to be secure.
Yeah, it's called substitution cipher, where you are pretty much saying letter A will be B, letter B will be C, and you would be surprised how easy it is to decode, because some letters are repeating more often than others. So if this would be static table, I would just need to listen to the traffic, and after a while, I will be able to figure out this has to be A because it's repeating in this frequency. So that's why I'm explaining this, because the technology sounds like a simple one, but there was actually a lot of thought into how it should work. And there are already like a very good technical capabilities that are preventing all this. If I listen to traffic, can I decode it? If I stop the driver, can I connect to protected resources? If I write a driver that will try to jump in priority before this one, can I listen to traffic? So as I said, it sounds simple. For the end users, the anti-keylogger protection is completely seamless. I cannot think about a scenario where they would even find out this is enabled. But at the same time, it provides like really robust security against this kind of attacks.
And so earlier, when Frank was talking about some of the enhanced security stuff, he mentioned, you know, and showed the whole concept of watermarking, you know, so prevents someone from just taking their phone out and taking a picture of the screen. But I think you kind of alluded to that you can take this a step further with, you know, screens, you know, anti-screen scraping or anti-key capturing.
So usually this is presented as something that prevents you from taking the screenshots. Again, that's the malicious insider. It is a problem. It's just not like super common. Anti-screen sharing and remote access Trojans, my personal experience, is more interested use case. And what you have to realize is we have all these hundreds and thousands of tools in Windows for remote access and taking the screenshots. We have, I don't know, Snagit, Greenshot, snipping tools, Snip and Sketch. We have all this TeamViewer, I don't know what. again, thousands and thousands and thousands of tools. What you don't really see is that these tools are always relying on the Windows APIs. So when, for example, you have Snagit and you take the screenshot of the screen, there is no magic code in the Snagit that's going pixel by pixel and start collecting the data. What Snagit is going to do is that it will ask Windows, it will call one of the Windows APIs, and it's going to say, I want you to send me the bitmap from this monitor, or I want you to get me the bitmap from this specific dimensions on the screen. That's how all these tools are working, okay? So you have the tool, it's calling Windows API. Windows API will return the bitmap, and then the tool itself can show you that bitmap. It can copy it to the clipboard, whatever you want to do. Now, with the anti-screen sharing protection or the app protection policies, what we are doing is that we hook every single one of these Windows APIs. I don't know exact number. It's like 10 to 12. It's very limited number, okay? So you can have thousands or tens of thousands tools, but all of them are using like a dozen of APIs. The DLL hook that we have, it's again working with the same kernel driver with all the same protections that I was talking about before. So when you have application and you try to take the screenshot, or you try to just display the bitmap that is somewhere on the endpoint, what we can do today is that we can intercept that call. We can have a look in the area that you are trying to look at. Is there any protected data? Citrix Workspace app, published application, desktop, again, Microsoft 365 documents, whatever it is. And if any of this protected or sensitive information is on the screen, instead of returning the bitmap, we are going just to give you black screen. So you cannot see the sensitive information. The same thing, for example, yeah, let's try this. Let's do the demo that was not really planned. So I'm going to open my Citrix Workspace on the screen, and I'm going to share it with you. And I'm just really hoping that this will not be visible. So tell me what you see. Okay, that's perfect, because again, this is sensitive information. This is Citrix Workspace. So what's happening is that the GoToMeeting that we have, when it's trying to get the bitmap, what is displayed on the screen, our kernel driver is just going to give you the black. It's just going to say, yeah, this is how it looks. Okay, easy to use. Let me close that one. Okay, so this anti-screen sharing protection, again, this is very important. This is targeting the underlying APIs. It's not specific applications. It's the same with the AntiKilogram. We are not going after known bad applications. We are going under like general approach where we can capture all of them. And I know it because first thing I did, I wrote my own keylogger and I wrote my own screen capture tool because I wanted to test how well this works. This is implemented as the DLL hook on all the relevant Windows APIs, the common one, GDI, DirectX, and so on. The more exotic one, Magnify in Windows, has a separate set of APIs for capturing the bitmaps. And this behavior, this protection, is enabled only when the protected window is visible on the screen. So that is something that I was showing you before. I would just like to mention, be aware of this behavior for the end users. You want to make sure to explain to them that they have the Citrix Workspace can be protected, so they will understand why it's no longer possible for them to share some sensitive data over Zoom, GoToMeeting, or whatever they are doing today.
No, that's super cool, Martin. Thanks for all of that. And I know I've seen you do this demo in the past, the anti-keylogger, and I think it would be really cool if you could show us that and show our listeners that, because I think that's also a very powerful demo just to see the capabilities of this.
Oh yeah, more than happy. So for the demo today, what I'm going to show you is, again, let's keep this real. So on the left side, you are going to see the view from the hacker. We are going to use Kali Linux. We are going to use Metasploit. This is exactly what would happen in the real life. before this demo, we've been able to infect the machine on the right side. So the payload has been already delivered. Again, maybe using the phishing attack or any other common method. What we are doing now is that we are starting the keylogger on this machine. This can be implemented using one of the Windows API, kernel driver. Again, doesn't matter. There are a couple of different methods. I tested all of them. We entered some text to unprotected application, the notepad, and you can see this, the keylogger is working. I can remotely see exactly what's happening. I'm going to take the screenshot of the remote session and let's have a look. Yes, and this is working just fine. Again, there is nothing unprotected on the screen at this moment, so the app protection policies are not active. Now, let's make this more interesting. I'm going to close this and we will start the Citrix Workspace app. And as I was mentioning before, even the initial authentication to Citrix Workspace itself is already protected by app protection policies. So I'm going to type in my short and easy to remember password. And this is already the moment when the protection is active. I cannot see the screen because protected application is visible. I cannot capture the text because the protected field, the username and password, is in focus at this moment.
How long is that password?
Yeah, I think like 37 characters. Okay, so the next step is I have some sensitive application, but this could be anything. So again, at this moment, anything that you can publish, any application or desktop that you can publish to Citrix virtual apps can be easily protected. Just to show you these capabilities, I have another password prompt for the sensitive document. So I'm going to enter second password, and here it is on the screen. Now, we can have a look at what the attacker is actually saying from all this happening. So I'm going to have a look at all the secret passwords that have been entered. I'm going to do the dump from the keylogger itself. And if you have a look at this text, you can see the special keys, shift, for example, they are handled differently, but any text, it's just complete chaos. I'm going to take the screenshot, and because this protected window is on the screen, the screenshot is going to be black. You can still see, for example, the taskbar, because that is not sensitive, but the protected content that we have, in this case, it's the published Adobe Reader, that is going to be completely black, no matter which technology I use and how I try to get that screenshot from that remote session. So how cool is that?
That's
Super
awesome.
cool. That's awesome. I've seen this demo before, and every time I love seeing it. So Martin, thank you so much. Like always, it's been a pleasure, and you always enlighten us with great information. So thank you so much for being here today with us. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so that was interesting, getting a couple different perspectives from Nick, Frank, and Martin, just on not only just securing the user, but securing the application, and then just interesting ways of securing the user. You know, whether it's from watermarking or blocking, you know, printing and things like that, all the way to preventing someone from doing screen captures or making all the things you're typing in your keyboard just turn into gibberish. I think it's really interesting ways of handling security.
Yeah, and I think you know, a big misconception is, you know, you can either have security or have a good end user experience. And I think through these demos and just talking to, you know, to all of these guys, you know, you saw that that's not the case, right? Like from an end user perspective, I'm not losing that productivity, yet I'm still able to secure that, right? And I think it's really important to keep that in mind. So cool. So Dan, that was a long 3 hours, but we made it. So for everyone who has joined us in all 3 masterclasses, we really appreciate you being here with us. If you weren't able to catch the previous masterclasses, or if you want to rewatch this one, they will all be available on demand. And now what we're going to do is we're going to open it up for Q&A, so that, you know, if Dan and I didn't ask these guys anything that's still on your mind, we're going to keep them around so that to give you a chance to ask them. But Again, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you being here.
Awesome. So one of the first questions that we've gotten is regarding the recording, if you're going to be able to see this on demand. The answer is yes. You will have these available on demand later. Also, if you weren't aware, like I mentioned earlier, we did have a cloud and a security masterclass that we did previously, and we will be doing them again later this afternoon. So if you weren't able to catch them earlier, be sure to check them out later this afternoon, but the recording will be available. So the first question I'm going to ask is for Martin. And Martin, they're wondering, how does the DLL look for sensitive data in the screen capture? Is this data tagged, or how did that work?
Yeah, so maybe it was just kind of my mistake on talking about sensitive data. The way how this works is that app protection policies is looking for processes and visible windows where the app protection policy requirement is flagged. So there are two libraries that are loaded with each of the protected process. Any visible window from those processes that is displayed on screen, that's considered sensitive data in this case.
All right, Nick, this one I think goes out to you. What types of things do we need to know about our apps if we want to use the web app firewall?
Sure. So yeah, that's a good question. There's some basic places that you can start. One would be, what type of web server is in use, right? Is it Apache IIS? What type of backend data sources are there? Classic one being something like SQL. Also, what services does the app rely on? What other things do they reach out to? And then another good one that often gets overlooked would be, how dynamic is the client-side interaction? So a lot of web applications actually do a lot of processing locally, like let's say JavaScript. We need to have a good idea of what that client-side interaction and processing looks like versus the server-side processing and things that WAF could actually intercept. So those are all good places to start, in my opinion.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. So this next one is for Frank. Frank, they're wondering where enhanced security is configured.
All right. So when you're actually creating your web and SaaS applications within the Citrix Cloud, and you're going through the settings, you'll actually get to your security settings. And as you go into the security settings, it'll almost be right before you finish your application within the Citrix Cloud, but you'll actually have the option to enable the enhanced security, and then from within there, you'll have the ability to select which components of the enhanced security that you would like to go ahead and enable for that individual application.
All right, next question is there lunch? Actually, yes, as soon as this is over, I have some bratwurst on the smoker right now, so that's actually a real question, by the way. Another question we have for Martin is, you mentioned this thing about the shared buffer refresh. Is it happening regularly or is it random?
The way how this works is anytime when you press the key, this list is going to be randomized if that key is already present in the table. And that is actually quite nice operating system behavior that you can see. If you press and hold any of the key on the keyboard, what you are going to see, if you have the keylogger installed, is the same character is going to be repeated for that key. This is because Windows is never even sending information to the driver that the key is being held. It's just doing the repetition of that character on its own. If you lift the finger and you press the key one by one, you can actually see that every single key press is going to result in a different character. So this is changing with every single key press that you are doing.
Really cool. And I think we have time for one more question, Martin. This one is also for you. They're wondering if the screenshot software and functionality is only available for Windows operating systems or if it also works for Mac operating systems.
Oh, the screenshot protection, that is working for Windows and for macOS as well. So for both of them.
Awesome. So I think that's all the questions we have time for today. Like I mentioned earlier, we will be having all 3 master classes later in the afternoon if you weren't able to catch them, as well as you can watch them on demand if you want to go back and listen to anything again. With that, we really appreciate your time and being here today. Thank you so much from Dan, myself, and all the experts. So we will be wrapping up the Q&A. Thank you, guys.